And joining us now with insight on what happened is retired naval aviator Brian Sunshine Sinclair. Brian, always good to see you. Unfortunately, not under these circumstances.
I agree. Good evening, Ginger, and thank you for having me.
All right, first of all, as a pilot, walk me through what you just heard in those final moments in that audio that we just played for our listeners.
Absolutely. So about 30 seconds prior to impact, the pilot decides to change runways. And you may have a graphic to show the visitors or the viewers, excuse me, but basically everything seems normal for lining up for a southerly runway 17. And then the pilot decides, I'm going to change runways, which is well within his, there you go, within his abilities. You can see from this graphic here, if you look up to the top of it, you see the black planes there. That's going to be the route of the ill-fated flight here. Everything seems normal as they're traveling from John Wayne, as you mentioned, from the north heading south. And they're originally lining up for the approach to runway 17, which is the green vertical bar there. And then just prior to landing, the pilot says, I'm going to cancel my instrument clearance, and I'm going to go ahead and I can see the field, I can see the horizon, even though it's at night. So I'm going to switch over to visual conditions, and I want to change runways and land on 27 right, which is the gold runway. The tower authorizes him to do so, and he's going to fly over top of the green runway there, 17, and it's going to start a gentle left-hand turn to the east, or to the right of the graphic there, and all the while he's descending. Now, this is his home field, or the aircraft's home field, so they're probably very aware of the mountainous terrain that's in the red shaded regions there. So the pilot, what he's going to do is after he starts his left-hand turn, he's going to look over his left shoulder, and he's going to start looking for the runway again. There's a chance that he may have turned a little early, so the runway is actually, as you can see in that graphic, almost behind the plane. So you really got to crane your neck, if you will. Now, what I'm worried, and this is all speculation, Ginger, and I should have prefaced this with the professionals of the NTSB are on site, as you know, collecting evidence, and they'll have some theories, and hopefully we'll see a preliminary report in about a month or so. Now, going back to the flight here. So the pilot's going to look over his shoulder looking for the runway. He's 20 seconds prior to impact. He's going to ask for the runway lights to be turned up. The tower replies, yep, they're turned up to full bright or 100%. And at that point, you hear the chaos as the pilot realizes, because he probably was looking outside and not necessarily perhaps minding his instruments to make sure he was in a safe profile. And during that final turn to heading kind of north, if you will, he's going to be about 725 feet, which, Ginger, is about half of the recommended altitude. So he's only about halfway as high as he needed to be. And then unfortunately, probably when he snaps to and looks at his instruments, or looks forward and looks at his instruments, he realizes the dire and unusual attitude of the aircraft. And then you hear the expletives and then the final transmission.
So how much could have weather played a role? I mean, if you're saying that this pilot, and again, I really appreciate that you are giving us your insight. We know that the federal officials are on scene and they're getting so much more detail to get to put together their theories. You're telling us from your vantage point, from your decades of experience, what you suspect could have happened. But if you're saying he had to look back, and if there's cloud cover or if there's bad weather, and then possibly saw that he was in a wrong position and not minding his instruments, possibly, could weather have been a huge factor in this crash?
Absolutely. Lack of visual cues because he was possibly in the clouds, or there was also reporting of mist or fog in the area. So it could have been a very poor visibility condition. And it looks like it was what we call marginal VFR. So the visibility was about 3 miles at the most. So unfortunately, there's low-lying clouds coupled with the fact that it is at night because the sun has set obviously at that hour, and being wrapped up in a turn, looking over his shoulder could have induced some type of spatial disorientation. And then unfortunately, it could have been recognized when you hear him transmit on the radio the expletives.
Yeah, and it's so unfortunate. We know that most, accidents in a car happen within a half mile of our home because we're so familiar with the terrain that maybe stop paying attention to a degree. Again, not saying that that's what this pilot has happened, but this is his home base that we are aware of. We've also heard from some pilots that say this turn can sometimes cause an engine to stall. Could you explain to us what that means?
Absolutely. So the Learjet 35 Alpha is dual engined, and there's two types of stalls. There's one with an engine where the engine stops producing thrust. The other one is stall with the wings. So the wings stop producing lift. So some folks at home may have seen the ring footage. the video camera footage, and you see the plane. It is actually turning to you can see the left of the screen, but it's also descending rapidly. So there's a chance as he's looking over his shoulder, he may have what we did a wrapped up turn where his wings went from level to more vertical. So up on a knife edge or on a wingtip. There you go. And if you can see he's turning to the left of the screen, and then there's a very immediate descent rate. There's a chance that's because the wings are no longer under him. He may have stalled one of the wings, and then he's at that point out of control, and he's just heading toward the earth.
How incredible is it, though, for this pilot? Because I know we have seen, emergency landings on golf courses or freeways or other large streets because pilots are trained to look for those types of places if they are in a dire emergency. So what kind of hero can we say this pilot potentially was to know he was in a dire situation and made the potential best case scenario by avoiding the homes and getting onto that massive street?
Ginger, thank you so much for that. And just in the pilot's honor, and if his next of kin are listening, he was an absolute hero. And what we've been trained to in the Navy, and I think this pilot did too, was if a crash is imminent, you're going to look for the dark spots. And as we do have Christmas lights out probably still, that could have saved some houses, as well as street lights. You look for brake lights, look for headlights on the cars. And once again, if unrecoverable, aim for the dark spot.
Wow, I can see that this, obviously, I mean, a lot of us are getting emotional over listening to those final moments. And this is one of the things that we were all talking about with this pilot. I feel he clearly made some heroic last-second decisions, potentially saving multiple lives. Brian, thank you so much for your insight tonight. Really appreciate talking to you.
My pleasure, Ginger. Thank you much.